So, like, how did N.W.A. manage to, like, make a name for itself, knowing that when Straight Outta Compton came out, radio was going to be kind of hesitant to play some of their material because, you know, after Police was very, like, brash and, like, the video got banned by MTV, and I think, did K-Day show you guys any support during that period?
I think that K-Day is probably the single most extraneous factor in the history of rap music. Little 5,000-watt station at the top of Alvarado Street with the Mixmasters, who were Tony G, Julio G, Greg Mack, and the Mixmasters. This was the most important factor outside of the group itself. And they were the only radio station in America that were playing gangster rap music. Yes, they were very important. We all owe a great debt of gratitude to people like Julio G and Greg Mack and Tony G. So, the group's job was to make the record. My job was really how to market it worldwide, and that was a very difficult proposition because of the content of the record. Right. Now, what was the reaction when you guys received the letter from the FBI? Well, it was a frightening letter. You know, remember now, this is August 1st of 1989. We're out on our first major tour with groups like LL Cool J and Salt and Pepper opening up for us. And we get a letter from the FBI, you know, that states that a song recorded by the rap group N.W.A. on their album entitled Straight Outta Compton encourages violence against and disrespect for the law enforcement officer. And they go on to talk about that 78 law enforcement officers were feloniously slain in the line of duty, and basically blaming N.W.A. for that fact. And it was the first time that I think a public agency like the FBI had ever come out and blamed a rap group or a rock and roll group or any kind of musical group for something as ridiculous as this letter. So it scared the hell out of us. But the Democratic congressman from San Jose, Donald Edwards, came out and chastised the FBI for taking a position like that against private individuals. And when he did that, we sort of felt that at least if something happened to us, that there would be somebody there to avenge it. And it also should be known, too, that, like, the record sales at the time wasn't showing the mass popularity of N.W.A. because, kids, here's a little bit of history for you. Before the Billboard charts went to SoundScan in 1992, how they used to track sales was that they would send out these little reports that the people at the music retailers would have to fill out, saying this record sold X amount of copies this week and whatnot. And reps from various labels would go to these retailers and they would sort of do stuff under the table like, hey, fudge these numbers and, you know, you'll get this in return, and saying our record. So what? Now, can you correct me on that anyway if that seems to be wrong, Mr. Heller? I think you're totally right, J. Mace. That's a good perspective of what was happening then. Then, of course, that first week that that SoundScan went in, nobody believed that rap records were really selling. Right. So the first week of SoundScan, we debuted at number 2 behind Paula Abdul, and then next week we went to number 1, and that was the beginning of SoundScan, and it brought legitimacy and credibility not only to the music business but to the people that were making records and the people selling records in the music business. And that was doing when it came out with Illis for Sagging, which was In for Life backwards. That's correct. You know, and how did you help Michelle A. get her deal with Atco? Okay, so Atco is a little company. Atco stands for Atlantic Company, so it's one of the Atlantic family of companies. And I went to Jerry Greenberg and told him that I had this artist, Michelle A., who had actually sung on the World Class Wrecking Crew Turn Out the Light single. That female single vocal on there was Michelle A. And I played it for him, and he really wanted J.J. Fad because he loved Supersonic. So I managed to force Michelle A. onto that deal by the fact that Jerry Greenberg, who was the president of Atco at the time, loved Supersonic by J.J. Fad. And really, the rest is rap history. And basically, she went on from there with No More Lies, Nicely, and the classic West Coast slow jam joint, Something in My Heart. Now, where did the DOC come involved? The DOC was a member of a group in Houston called the Fila Fresh Crew, and we were sending Dre all over the country just to to do radio, and he ran into the DOC in Texas with the Feel of Fresh crew, and he told us about him. And we brought him to California, and he stayed in an apartment with Yella and Dre in South Central, and really became more or less the sixth Beatle.
Mm-hmm. So he was like the dude that's like, you know of him, but like you sort of count him as family, a part of N.W.A, but like sort of like the silent member, so to speak.
Sort of. I think that's true, like Billy Preston was, with the Beatles.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that the important thing is that in his own right, the DOC was probably the greatest rapper that I've ever heard, and no one does it better is one of the great rap records of all time.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, in the grand finale, which is the last song on that, and probably the best song on that record, both Dre and the DOC and Ice Cube and everyone who later we had a falling out with talk about super dope manager Jerry Heller.
Mm-hmm.
I find that ironic. But the DOC was a terrific artist, and of course that horrible accident, automobile accident that he had, cut short his career. Mm-hmm. Because he got hit in the throat